AfCFTA to remain a trade treaty. We want ownership amongst the individuals and people who own 80% of economic activity on the continent, that's startups. So that brings the point closer home. What is the AfTA logic? The AfTA logic basically situates key stakeholders that no matter what we say about AfCFTA, if we don't have them, the enablers and the implementers working hand in hand, it will remain a trade treaty. That's the greatest investment opportunity. So, of course, there are the enablers who basically create the market. They are the likes of our industrial development corporations. We're happy to see we have the chairperson of IDC here. They are also the power generators, because we can't even start talking about production and industrialization without energy. And I think we talked about load shedding earlier. We can also even going because what are we trading if we are not producing? But then what about the workforce we need? Where are the artisans? Where are the engineers? Where are the inspectors? All of these things need to be programmatized and understood and sequenced. And then where are the markets? I mean, where are the hubs? And how are they talking to each other? Because what we'll end up creating, if we're not careful, is fragments and silos of communities doing the same thing, and yet our markets continue to get dominated by producers from outside the AfTA region. When an SME in India wakes up and is producing, he thinks Africa market. When an SME in China wakes up and is producing, he thinks Africa market. But the Uganda SME does not think Dakar market. He just can't even contextualize it. There are all manner of barriers. Some are language, some are all manner of things. They don't even know whether to trust the person on the other end that they're dealing with. And then there are all these regulatory barriers as well. And so, once we're clear of what will make within the ecosystem important, now crystallize the implementation in 3 focus areas. First, it has to be an AfTA of the people, inclusion, very key. Else, we lose. 2, innovation. We can't do business as usual. It can't just be the same old. I always say one thing that Africans are good at is fragmenting, circumventing, and not dating. There's just so much, there's nothing new that we need to create anymore. It exists. The real innovation is how we're going to get us to work together. That's the innovation. How do we really, really get us working together for once? And that brings me to breaking silos and getting Africa working together for real. But the silos start really from the top. There's no way we're going to integrate a continent of 55 countries when our governments are not integrated, or when ministry departments and agencies are not integrated, and when private sector, everybody's building his own thing, and they're not integrated. So there's some kind of sequencing and coordination that needs to happen. And we're happy to have among the stakeholders in the room today some of the leaders at the vanguard of some of these conversations. I'm happy to see the GCPA, because a lot of this has been inspired by vision. I'm also happy to see my sister Nados here as well, because she has the immense task of coordinating the development agenda of the continent throughout our NEPAD, and of course our premier and leading financial DFI on the continent is here as well. Good to see my brother Acha as well, who is a lot of these things that we've managed to put together, we may have borrowed from some of his research work and consulting work. But moving now to the next slide, where we're moving from those 3-pronged strategies. Now, I mean, those 3-pronged ideas, now we need to move into the strategy. So for we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of, we don't need to build any new. Our fintechs, startups, they're doing these things already. Innovation is how do you bring them together, where they continue to own what they're doing, but they're able to leverage the network to create scale. And that's what made us create the Caravan. The Caravan is actually an acronym, by the way. It's a Continental Advancement and Rebirth through Value Chain Accelerators and Networks. Also, it's inspired by the camels and caravans that traverse the Trans-Sahara during the times of Mansa Musa during the trade. In Africa, we just moved around very freely. We tied our wagons into one paradigm and traded together. Today, our wagons, our innovations, our ideas, our skills, and we need to be able to bring them together. The second is the hub, which is what we are really discussing today, which is the most advanced of what of the CFTA program, and that has to do more with it. So the carbon has to do with the SMEs. The hub has to do with governance. So with our technical support has developed, we're able to now connect single window systems across the continent of customs, because what the SME wants to do is not understand what treaty or whatever. They just want to know, how will I get my product to another market? And if we can remove as much of that barrier out of the way by getting regulators to talk to each other, it makes their life easier. The problem is that most of these regulators are powered by institutions that are commercial, and that would not want to compete with each other in each other's markets. And that's fragmentation. So through this hub, we're managing to now get and a little more. And then, of course, there's PROPER. PROPER is also an acronym for Proof of Origin, Platform for Electronic Registration, which, with the help of ADA NEPAD, which is medicines and drugs harmonization protocol around the continent in terms of its regulation harmonization. We're now building tools that can make these medicines talk together. When people talk about AfCFTA, it's all about trade. 80% of everything that is happening under AfCFTA actually falls outside of trade. I mean, if you talk about, I just talked about medicines, that doesn't fall under ministries and departments of trade. They fall under health. Payments fall under the banking. All of these things fall under regulators that if we don't incorporate into this scheme, you end up with your goods at the border, and FDA is going to say, well, I don't know, it's not safe. So all of these things now have to. What have we done so far? We started with a partner, 10,000 an SME, knew nothing about another market. We ran hackathons and other things. They came on board. And over the last 3 years, we've been monitoring and working with them to move their product from one country to homes and shelves in countries across the continent. And whilst walking the journey with them, identifying all the pain points they go through and all the people they need. They can follow their money, they can trust the process, and they can really, really integrate and trade across borders. I'll move on to, there are also logistic operators that we've engaged. You saw in the earlier video where the likes of Rwanda Air, Ethiopian Airlines, among others, have already integrated. And also a trade facilitation platform that is enabling the financial institutions to be able to follow the work of the SMEs and follow the value chains that they get their products. Pretty much, and then now along comes the guided trade initiative, where we're now focusing on, under the auspices of the CFTA Secretariat, identifying countries, the coalition of the ready and the willing, who are ready to begin to open their market trading. And the countries that we're currently focused on are those countries within the guided trade initiative for this pilot. The AfCFTA Hub has no business trying to get in the middle of what the private sector. What it's offering is a mechanism that will create interoperability, interconnectivity, to ensure that one of the things, if you want to fail in Africa, try to create something that you won't. Everybody will come after you. What you want to do is to empower, unlike the rest of the world where they're more monolithic in their way. In Africa, if you come up with something from Ghana, Togo doesn't want you because he has his own thing. Nigeria is also going to build his own thing. So what we must do is to create something that allows to whole without losing. And that's, and there are many global examples of that with the open network for digital commerce that India has built. The next low hanging have goods and service products across, in fact, most of them have shops in about 10 countries. They're probably the quickest enablers of taking again is regulatory. And so being being able to bring regulatory institutions onto the platform is creating this seamless mechanism by which they're able to move the efforts across the continent. I'm just going to breeze through quickly. These are some of the SMEs I talked about. And then there's fraud, right, that we have to pay attention to. I mean, if you're going to do anything digital, you must be sure who you're dealing with. You know, you want to be, because that's one thing that can blow this whole thing. If people have to send goods to another market, they've never met the person before, and then now the money gets missing, the goods never gets delivered, all of that, the logistics operators. So the kind of KYC systems, the verification mechanisms, the cybersecurity protocols, these are all things that within countries on the continent and institutions are vested with those skills. And we've had to engage the telcos, all of whom have the bills that we call program. So what are the key components of the app? It's a super app. Interfaces for Arabna, who is producing clothes across the continent. But I want to buy clothes from Arabna. I want to know that she really exists. Because now we've linked her mobile network that because she has a profile, with her after number that she generates, that becomes a digital ID. We're able to go into her profile. It becomes like a LinkedIn profile. We know who she banks with. We can verify that. There's a mechanism within the app that allows you association she belongs to, if it's the Ghana Association of Industries or SAFRA or whatever, and they will verify before you even move to the next step. If they don't get that verification, you cannot move to the next step, okay? We know which banks it banks with, and all of those things have been thought through to ensure that, and she cannot log in as a regulator in that sense. You know, only regulators can log in as regulators, only traders can log in as traders, and governments can log in as governments, and so that's the kind of interfaces that we built into this directive. There's the after number that is generated. You can verify at an admin level. You set your own privacy protocols, which you have to keep changing and updating. We've also now connecting blacklists of telcos in various countries because, I mean, it's blacklisted, and now all of a sudden it's linked to his digital ID, which is linked to his bank, which is linked to enter the system, digital ID, be able to realize that, oh, this person has been. So it's difficult for him to be able to try to do business in another country. In pilot, a lot of work has gone on. Management, there's the blacklist intelligence that I talked about, marketplace will take place. Talk to each other digitally. And then, of course, there's e-logistics. For AfCFTA market to be successful, there has to be a single transaction traceability protocol. There's a common framework for that and basic model for different platform operators to collaborate. Again, that for any of these things to work, we have to perfect it at the country level first. It's just not going to work ad hocly, and it's not just going to happen by itself. So we started with 3 countries, Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, this is Zambia, and we're now working on DRC. In Ghana, we just finished completing the entire, connecting all the regulators into the after hub. So Postal Courier Services Regulatory Commission, which means that you could actually sit at your home and have a courier person pick up your product, take it all the way to DHL or Ethiopian Airlines, and it will be moved, and just a single common number, it's able to verify your food and drug ID, verifies your customs, your certificate of origin and everything, and actually go anywhere, and your product can move into another country. When we are done with the integrations in the other countries, we'll be able to pilot real digital trading happening among those 4 countries, and beyond that, we can take it to multiple countries. I see Sophie giving me a wink, so tipping me a wink. So I'm going to stop there. I get carried away when I'm talking about this, but I'm very excited about it. And thank you very much. And during question times, I'm happy to also come back.
Thank you, Adam. Some excellent work that has gone through into the hub. I think I'm really excited at the fact that we've got a lot of private sector players here today. We cannot realize the FCT hub without private sector. And I think we can also learn partners and so I'm going to go first with our brother Sol. I'm not sure if people know, but the AFDB has been doing a lot of work in industrialization with SMMEs, doing a lot with governments around regulatory frameworks. So I guess as a short, I just wanted to shed a bit of light around that work. And in the second round, I'll come back after I've invited all the speakers and we're gonna have an action plan that comes out of the ADB. So if you can please shed light on that.
Okay. I hope you can hear me. Okay, is it down or maybe I move around a little
As
bit?
comfortable as you want to.
So the African Development Bank is seeking really to support industrialization in Africa. Why? It's really about creating jobs. If we focus on just the big ones and we don't look at the SMEs in their value chains, then we've missed the opportunity to really impact the creators of about 80 to 90% of jobs. So if we're working with ShopRite, we also want to work with the SME suppliers or the SME distributors. So for us, looking at corporate value is very important. When it comes to industrialization, you heard UOFI Grant, the plenary session say, why? So for us, when we think of industrialization, what we say is it shouldn't be import substitution to 54 countries. It should really be about where are we competitive in terms of the raw material production, which gives us a better chance at really doing value addition within our continent. So when we took a look at this as the AFDB, we said, let's focus on food processing, agro-processing, because we produce some of these, wheats and grains in Africa. So then we can do the value addition a lot more naturally. Let's focus on cotton to textiles to garments, because we have the C4, which was talked about today, anchored by Benin, okay? Then we said, what are some of the natural endowments we have in Africa? In some countries, Zimbabwe, it's about minerals. Minerals that are going to manufacture. Then we said, frog. So we need to look at the fourth industrial revolution and see how we can help. Now, these are areas in which we can be competitive and innovative. But what was one lesson that we learned from COVID? One of the key lessons we learned from COVID is when it comes to the pharmaceutical and vaccine space, we would finish up last in a crisis. So even though we're not competitive in producing what we call the active pharmaceutical ingredients or APIs, we said we need to have a minimum security of supply for our continent, because it's better to be able to buy something at 50 cents and not be able to buy what should be available at 5 cents, right? So we need to have a minimum security of supply. So these are the 5, value chains, industrial value chains we're going to focus on. But we've got to focus on the SMEs. Estimated for SMEs in Africa about 330 billion. So the banks, the traditional financial institutions are not naturally working with SMEs. If I directly finance an SME as a finance house, I would only do a few SMEs. But if I can go through financial intermediaries, and nowadays it doesn't have to be a branch network, it can be a digital network, okay, then I'll. So it's important for me to always have the conversation with financial institutions and say, what would it take? So we're challenged on SMEs. We're also challenged on women-owned SMEs. Then we're further challenged on youth entrepreneurs, SMEs. So this is why we at the AFDB came up with the AfCFTA program. I hope all of you have heard about the AfCFTA program.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the good news is we've been able to provide up to $1 billion of access to finance to women-owned businesses as of this, and we intend to do that. So lastly, talk about the the innovation is going to come from the youth. If women are struggling to actually get financing from banks, how much more the youth entrepreneurs? Which collateral are they going to pledge? My house? My son is going to pledge my house? No, I'm not going to do that. Then in addition, you know, the youth really tend to be very tech, okay? But they fail at the commercialization stage. I think you mentioned this, earlier, yeah? So what we've designed, and we're going to be rolling this out across Africa, it's I can tell you it's his passion. What we've done is we've looked at the life cycle of the youth entrepreneurs, and we said, point instant market failure, we can have an impact. Try to play family and friends, great point. So they won't have collateral when they go to the banks. So what we're creating, really on a multi-country basis, is really an angel investment fund, a credit guarantees fund, and then also a technical assistance fund to really support the youth entrepreneurs in preparing business plans, in preparing reports, in understanding the governance around third-party money. It's not your money, you can't commingle. But we're also saying that you have to borrow, but really at a because we don't want you to wait for what we do in Africa, wait for the foundations to because the things that you need to do to actually get your businesses going. So for us, and looking at you later on, they will sell to private equity, but the YABE will constantly be with you. And for us, it's really an ecosystem youth entrepreneurship platform. And it's going to be a game changer, the same way the CFTA is going to be a game changer. Thank
Excellent. We can't wait to work with you on that. I mean, I hope you are taking notes. You've taken Solomon's number because you saw he's looking at you saying he's going to provide you with all this stuff. So thanks so much. NEPAD is really a big convener of business, and we keep saying it's important table CTA to be realized. But I wanted to segue from one of the points that Solomon was making earlier on about the pharmaceutical space. NEPAD did quite a bit of work in the medicine trade and regulatory harmonization space. So would you speak a bit about that? And I think the next level before you get off, partnership, why was it important already to come on the table?
And good afternoon, everybody. I think my stomach is rumbling, so I thought, really great thank you to AfroChampion, really for this platform, because it's making our lives as our NEPAD very easy, If you see the under the control of DCP anyway. But if you see the mandate of our NEPAD, the first and most important one is to coordinate all the development activities at the continental level to make sure that they are result-oriented and they are focused in terms of meeting the targets of Agenda 2063. The second is really to build knowledge to the African member states, building their capacities and making sure that are aligned to the Agenda 2063. Together, we build the Africa we want, a very integrated, unified, united, economic powerhouse. Truly, if you look at the resource mobilization aspect of it, our role is really to make sure also that we have all the resources mobilized to support the member states' activities. And all this requires a platform of coordination. And this could be expanded and used to really meet our and excited development. Now, going back to what have been asked, it's important for any integrated And the harmonization of rules, legal, regulatory framework is critical and very important. And we started with the AMRH, the African Medicine Regulatory and Harmonization Framework, which looked at all the regulatory frameworks in the continent and tried to harmonize that so that the pharmaceutical, and therefore that is one aspect, but in all the other products and services that require the harmonization, that is what we are doing. And this platform will help us in disseminating the information, but also collecting information. The second very important thing when we talk about knowledge-driven advisory services is that we have to collect the knowledge. And knowledge is everywhere in Africa, but it's therefore the knowledge is not really scaled and scaled up. And positively, if we get we can collect all the knowledge, and from that knowledge, we can upgrade it, and we can disseminate it. One of the things that I'll tell you, because of time, is an example. When we talk about energy, my brother from ADB, President Adishina, said that, it would be available to the enterprises that are coming out of the Energize Africa, because they are coming out of the Energize Africa, because Energize Africa is about the empowerment of youth. Are we going to really create that? No. There are many, and I've been in the private sector as a policy advisor since the 1990s, many initiatives on development and empowerment of youth, but they're all scattered. The knowledge is not scaled up again. It's not expanded. And therefore, this, again, platform would help us really collect this information and going to what I said, one of the things that is really to make this available for the youth enterprises and startups that are coming out of the Energize Africa. And Energize Africa is not just out and parts coming out, which are 1 million per year, and we are thinking of 1 billion go. All the other efforts, organizations, and all partners that are working on youth enterprise development and youth empowerment, let's get together, let's scale it up and upscale, the knowledge that we have, so that, we grow, these youthful enterprises. I thank you, but so much to say.
I know.
But,
So much to say, but guess what? I don't even have to ask you in the next round as to what your comment is, because NEPA being on the table. So thanks for that. I'm going to ask Nick and Sons and please come up.
Thank you so much, Vi. And good morning. Oh, it's still morning. I'm checking my clock and my watch. Thank you so much, Afro Champions, for this opportunity. And congratulations on this AfCFTA hub, which is one of your bold ideas, which really transforming Africa in but really moving. What we like about these projects is because they are now translating into life all the policy and the good political will of the leadership of the continent and the aspiration of the citizens of Africa. We need something to keep our hope high as we also diligently work to implementing and really some good products to harvest as we scale up. In few minutes, I wish to link this whole FCFTA hub to something that the continent is looking up to, especially when it as connecting to this concerned. I wish to talk a little bit more about the initiative that we are seeking to implement, have already mobilized the so that we leverage the convening power of the African Union to, when we talk about women and youth and the intersection of those two demographics with the African citizens on the continent, when it comes to trading and production, actually, that intersection, I don't know, Acha, what you can estimate. I think above 80%, by all means. So we are committed to including women. Parity across. And African Union has committed to 35% inclusion for very low in terms of, yeah, but that is what it is. And we are also having this decade, 2020 to 2030, whereby we are talking of a decade for women's inclusion in finance and economic. So then we are looking at both women and youth separate financial and economic inclusion because of the challenges. I think, Solomon, you mentioned them. So this Wi-Fi initiative, Women and Youth, financial inclusion is civilized us in Africa. Whatever in your lane, that's why I like this concept of the hub. We are not disrupting anything. We are not even pretending to support you do what you're doing better. What we are saying is, let's come together. Let's be transparent about what we are doing. Let's be accountable on what we are doing. Let's avoid the duplications, because when it comes to financial inclusion, we needed to report on the same thing in different corners, and when you add up, the numbers add up, but in fact, they are not, because maybe we are all reporting on the same group and reporting on it at different layers. So, can we do that? Then, working group or schemes. We have one on financial inclusion, and we have one on quotas. That is also looking at quotas in employment, quotas in procurement. What the union is to create that framework for all of us to account to the African citizen. Can we all be knowing what are you getting as feedback from the ground, which needs policy action to look at, and then we advocate it among the governance, the policy organs of our member states, and then go back to implement. Create a system like that, which we are going, in the end, after 10 years of this, we have mobilized resources, $100 billion to them at the end of the decade. That is what we committed. And I see this hub as one tool, and maybe we can even similar concepts as to how we can now be documenting what is happening on the ground of all the partakers into the Wi-Fi initiative, so that we'll be reporting, we'll be meeting each year. This year we met in February, whereby we have some and other. We are all mapping. So that's the beauty of what you're doing, and I wish to congratulate you and to aspire to seeing more into the Wi-Fi, how we can maybe be connected. We monitor to African citizens, mainly women and youth in business. Thank you so much.
AfCFTA is just getting even more excited. I'm loving hearing people connecting, women and youth at the center of it all. And so much conversation happening around convening and learning around each other. And I think probably I should bring you in, Ms. Busi. This is Busi Mabuza from Industrial Development Corporation. And I really want to speak about, or continue the conversation and this thread around industrialization and the work you're doing around that. But I think importantly, some of the also take around the work that the BRICS business.
I'm mic'd up, thanks, Sophie. So as the Industrial Development Corporation, we're very excited by the opportunity that such a hub presents. We can only deliver on our mandate through partners, and to have a platform that can present to us the opportunity of accessing trusted partners is very, very exciting. The Industrial Development Corporation is, of course, 100% owned by the South African government, but we operate in 17 countries. We're not there yet. We're not halfway through. Our exposure is just, in terms of our, we don't quite use partners in the continent. What we hear from our partners, because of our approach, we don't just provide finance, but we provide non-financial support as well. Our business partners inform us that access to information, my sister referred to knowledge, having access to knowledge, is a barrier for them. I trust that this hub is going to slow those down for all our business partners. Another area that they face, of course, is the markets. So I am very, very excited that we are now going to be able to. Have you been to the AfCFTA? Is that of finally, of course, the BRIC countries, South Africa chairs BRICS for this year, and therefore we as the BRICS Business Council are chairing the Business Council and will be hosting in South Africa in all the BRIC nations. The approach of the BRIC nations has been to come to each country individually. I hope that a hub such as this one, and able to therefore fashion access the opportunities that we know are not just massive in terms of to our combined GDP as a continent, but also growing at a compared to us, what will lift the opportunity for industrializing our continent. So I'm very excited. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. We look forward to having IDC on board, and we can't wait to work with the BRICS Business Council. I spoke about load shedding, and I'm still glad we're on. So to step it up into areas that are not good, are important, and I'd like to start with energy. Who's currently expanding across the continent in different around tanks. So let's have a conversation. How do we keep the lights on to make sure that businesses such no pressure, no pressure. No pressure, no pressure.
Good afternoon to everyone. And thanks again to Champions. I think the great work that you're doing, Doc, and the team, and obviously the AfCFTA Hub. To us, I think as Petro is saying, we have taken a view that we need to probably utilize the skills that we have developed over the last 30 to 35 years, especially in handling African continent in terms of part of South Africa, our exploration activities that we've done there over the years. And we've taken a view that we look to other countries for support, but probably out of necessity as well, because we've run out of gas down in our blocks that we have in our country, and probably looking into West Africa is probably not a bad opportunity. We did that, we have an asset. We did that, we have an asset, as Petro is saying, in Ghana. That asset is performing very well in terms of the asset that we have in Ghana. And I think based on the performance of that asset,